All right, I want to talk about adding a timer to your game so that users will know how well they played your game, which is kind of important so people can compare and say, oh, I finished it in 12 seconds, it took me 18, whatever it might be. So I want you to notice I was on that welcome screen for at least 5 or 6 seconds, and the timer here didn't start counting until I got to this first scene. So it's important. It's easy to add a timer, but you only want it to count when it should be counting. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this here, and then I want you to notice that when I go to the last scene, the timer was at 17 when I left the scene, and it's at 17 here and has stopped counting. So let's take a look at how you do that. So first of all, you need to add a game attribute called game timer. GameSalad has a default attribute called time, but you don't want to use that because it ends up going out to like 10 decimal places and looks kind of crazy. So just add a game timer, set it to 0. So that means when the game starts, it's set to 0, and we'll go from there. So then I created an actor called timer and added a rule. And the rule is simply that in order to get it to only count when it's in the right spot, you have to tell it only do this when you're on this scene. So in the attribute area here, you add an attribute comparison here. I'll delete this and just do it. So I'm adding an attribute comparison. I deleted anything that was in there by default. And I'm choosing scene, name, and I'm going to say is, and then you have to be very precise and name it exactly what you named your first scene. I think this is what I did. Let me double check. Maze level 1. Yep, that's what I did there. Okay. So that means it will this rule will only trigger if the scene is on maze level 1. And then what we have here, and I'll just do this again. So in the then area, we're actually going to add a timer, and the timer is up here in the right. If it doesn't go in the then area, you can just drag and put it in there. So it needs to be in the then area. So we're going to say every 1 second, and we're going to do a change attribute and put that into the do area of the timer. So we're going to change the attribute game timer. We're going to make this an expression to game timer plus 1. So this is saying every second that passes, change the game timer to whatever it currently is to 1 more. So each second it would do that. Then the last thing I have in here is just a display text to display the game timer, and then I can drag this timer onto the scenes where I want it. So on the maze level 1 scene, I have the timer dragged out right here. And then on the you win scene, I have the timer just dragged out here, and these timers will just display whatever the current time is. And when you get to this scene, it won't count anymore. It will just leave it as whatever it was when it left this maze level 1 scene right here. So the key is add an attribute and then create an actor. I just called it timer, a rule teaching it how to count, and a rule displaying, not a rule, but a behavior displaying the text. Okay, good luck.